Have you ever wondered why you keep making the same mistakes? Why the same pain return, wearing different names, different faces, but always finding its way back to you? What if the enemy you're trying to outrun is not outside you, but within? There is a part of you you don't want to look at, a version of yourself that you've hidden, silenced, maybe even feared. But it's still there. It moves in the background of your thoughts, tugs at the strings of your emotions, and whispers behind every choice you make. Carl Jung called it the shadow, and until you face it, you won't know who's really living your life. This is not just psychology, it's a mirror, and today, we're going to walk toward it. Philosophical context. Carl Jung was not interested in making people perfect. He was interested in making them whole. Unlike many thinkers of his time, Jung didn't believe the goal of life was to suppress the darkness inside us. Instead, he believed that true transformation comes from learning to see that darkness and then integrating it, not conquering, not denying, but understanding. He called this darkness the shadow, everything in us that we don't want to admit exists. Our anger, our jealousy, our fear of failure, even our brilliance, if we've been taught it's too much. The shadow isn't just a container for negative traits. It holds the parts of us that were shamed, rejected, or punished when we were too young to defend them. So we buried them. We buried them to survive. But now, they shape our lives from underground. Jung believed that each person's psychological task was to become conscious of their shadow, to bring light to what had been hidden. Because what we repress doesn't disappear, it becomes fate. When we ignore our shadow, we project it onto others. We say, that person is arrogant, but maybe we're ashamed of our own desire to be seen. We say, they're so selfish, but maybe we were punished every time we tried to set a boundary. The shadow explains why we repeat the same toxic relationships, why we sabotage success just before it arrives, why we smile on the outside and feel hollow on the inside, because something in us is playing a role we didn't even know we were cast for. And until we meet that hidden part, we'll keep calling it destiny. Real-life resonance. Think about someone you know, maybe even yourself, who always seems to choose the wrong partner. Every relationship feels different at first, but somehow it always ends in the same pain. Same betrayal, same story, different characters, or someone who self-destructs the moment things start going well. They get the opportunity, the recognition, the love, and suddenly they disappear. They get sick. They sabotage the very thing they longed for. Most people call this bad luck. Some call it self-sabotage. Carl Jung called it the shadow at work. It's not that we want to suffer. It's that part of us believes we deserve to. Or worse, that suffering is safer than being fully seen. You see, the shadow isn't evil. It's protective. It carries the messages we picked up long ago. If you speak up, you'll be punished. If you shine too brightly, they'll hate you. If you trust, you'll be hurt. And so it acts out from behind the curtain, making sure those old truths are never challenged. Here's the catch. The more we ignore the shadow, the more power it gains over our lives. The people we judge harshly, often mirrors of the traits we've disowned. The situations that trigger us, often signposts pointing to old wounds. The discomfort we feel in silence, often the sound of our shadow knocking. Symbolism and metaphor. The shadow isn't a monster hiding under your bed. It's a child you once were, left behind in a moment of shame, fear, or rejection. And it's been waiting ever since, not to attack you, but to be seen. Jung didn't see the psyche as a war zone of good versus evil. He saw it as a landscape, with valleys, light, darkness, and hidden caves. The shadow lives in those caves. And like all caves, what we fear is not what's inside, but what we imagine might be. One of Jung's favorite metaphors was the mirror. He said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." What if the person you resent most is simply holding up a mirror to a part of you that you've abandoned? What if the boss who dismisses you reflects your own dismissal of your voice? What if the friend who constantly brags exposes your buried longing to be acknowledged? This is the uncomfortable beauty of the shadow. It never leaves you alone. It shows up in others, in dreams, in accidents, in slips of the tongue, in the things you laugh at too hard and the things you defend too fiercely. It's always trying to get your attention, not to destroy you, but to complete you. The shadow is not your darkness. It is your unintegrated wholeness. Psychological insight. Most people don't realize they're wearing a mask. Jung called it the persona, the version of you that's acceptable to the world. The polite one, the strong one, the agreeable one. But every mask has a cost. The more polished the surface, the more pressure builds underneath. And that pressure is the shadow, pushing up through anxiety, depression, rage, jealousy, self-sabotage. What happens when we never acknowledge it? It doesn't disappear. It leaks out in passive aggression, in burnout, in bitterness that has no name. The irony? What we repress most often contains our deepest gifts. The child who was punished for being loud might become a timid adult, while their natural charisma stays trapped in the shadow. The one mocked for being too sensitive might hide their empathy for years, only to become emotionally numb, even to themselves. Jung believed that the shadow isn't just where our pain lives, it's where our potential lives. He wrote, "The gold is in the dark." And so the goal isn't to fix the shadow, but to meet it. To be honest about what we've buried. To stop pretending and start listening. Because only when the shadow is named can it begin to soften. And only when it softens can it begin to serve us. Challenge to the viewer. So now the question is no longer, do I have a shadow? You do. We all do. The real question is, are you willing to face it? Not in theory, not as a nice concept, but in your real, everyday life. Think of the last time someone made you angry. Not mildly annoyed, but deeply, disproportionately triggered. What exactly did they do? What emotion did it spark? Now ask yourself, when was the first time you felt that same emotion? Whose voice are you really hearing? Now go deeper. What do you judge most in others? Is it arrogance, neediness, laziness, control? Now be brutally honest. Where does that trait live in you? It might be buried. It might be quiet, but it's there. And it's waiting to be seen, not punished, not denied, but understood. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." So here's your challenge. This week, choose discomfort over denial. Choose honesty over image. Choose to ask, what part of me have I disowned? And what is it trying to tell me? Because the shadow doesn't disappear when ignored. It disappears when it's integrated. Reflective practice. Facing the shadow isn't a one-time event. It's a practice. And like any practice, it begins with a single, intentional step. Here's one you can try. Simple, but not easy. Take out a journal. Write down 3 people who trigger you. Not just annoy you, but stir something deeper. Resentment, insecurity, even admiration you can't admit. Next to each name, describe what specifically bothers you about them. Be honest, be raw, be unfiltered. Now pause. Look at each trait. Ask yourself, is this something I was once punished for? Is this something I've been told not to be? Is this something I secretly wish I could express? Then write this sentence. The part of me that insert trait wants to be acknowledged, not erased. You might feel resistance. That's okay. Resistance is the shadow's first language. Stay with it. Another practice. When you're triggered this week, stop. Instead of reacting, whisper this inside. This is not about them. This is about me. Then go inward. Ask, what part of me is waking up right now? You don't need to fix it. You just need to witness it. Because witnessing is how healing begins. And remember, the shadow doesn't want to win. It wants to belong. Emotional immersion, guided moment. Close your eyes, just for a moment, not to escape, but to meet someone who's been waiting. Picture yourself in a quiet hallway. At the end is a door, simple, old, familiar. You've passed it many times, but never opened it. Today, you do. Inside, there's a room, dim, silent, still. And in that room, someone is sitting with their back to you. You walk closer, and slowly, they turn. It's you, but not you show the world. It's the version of you that holds your anger, your envy, your grief, your brilliance, your softness, your wildness. You don't say anything at first. Neither do they. You just look. For the first time, really look. What do you see? What do they need? What do they fear? And most importantly, what would happen if you sat beside them and didn't try to change them? Just stayed, just listened, just allowed them to exist. Stay here for a moment. Breathe. Let whatever rises, rise. Let whatever softens, soften. And when you're ready, gently return. But don't close the door. Leave it slightly open, so the next time the shadow knocks, it doesn't have to break in. Closing reflection. So many of us are trying to heal by adding more light, more positivity, more control, more things that feel safe and shiny on the surface. But real healing doesn't come from light alone. It comes from walking into the places you swore you'd never return to, and realizing you've always had the strength to walk through them. Carl Jung didn't ask us to become perfect. He asked us to become aware, to stop blaming fate and start listening to the parts of ourselves we've exiled. Because everything we push away only becomes louder in the dark. And here's the truth. The shadow you fear the most is often the part of you that loves the deepest. The one that remembers how much it hurt to not be accepted, to not be chosen, to not be enough. But now, you're the one who gets to choose. You're the one who gets to return. So choose gently, choose bravely, and choose to make the unconscious conscious. Now read it again, slowly, not with your mind, but with the part of you that just remembered something ancient. This quote isn't just a sentence, it's a mirror. And if you've made it this far, you've already started looking into it. You're not here to avoid the dark. You're here to understand that the dark was never the enemy. You're not broken. You're becoming whole. Fate doesn't control you. Unconsciousness does. And the moment you choose awareness, you begin to write a new script. So tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself softly, what part of me have I not made peace with yet? And listen, not to fix, not to judge, just to hear. This is how it begins. One breath, one question, one shadow at a time.